Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Code. One topic, no script. And today we're going to talk about something a little sluggish, and that would be why do some comic movies struggle? So let's see here. Jamie, you did Batman the other day or today, as far as Twitch streams go. Tone, why don't you go ahead and take this one away? Why do you think some comic movies just cannot get off the launch pad? Like, why do you think they struggle so much in the box office and then even into home media?
So I like to start with I guess being the resident old guy here, perspective. And I think society has become increasingly, as we've gotten better access to better technologies and movies have gotten more refined and more refined, better developed, better accessible, the standard to what we call good has increasingly risen.
Okay.
So I think you could take a bad comic movie today, and if you played that same comic movie pre-MCU, we would have called it great. If we played
Okay.
that same comic movie in the 80s, it would have been outstanding, right? And so I think there's been a sliding scale. Now that's great. That scale is great because it shows development and maturation of an industry, right? What we thought was good should continue. What we think is good should continuously get increase and get better. But I don't think today's movies are bad, no matter how bad it is, relative to its predecessors or its ancestors in superhero movie history. Let me give you an example.
Go for it.
We could say I'm going to say the great grandfather of the great grandfather, the modern comic movie is Superman the movie, right? And I think Superman the movie has aged exceptionally well.
Right? Very much so.
The most memorable movie, however, that people occasionally bring up is Superman 2, right? Where he fights the Kryptonian villains.
It's not where I thought you were going, but I'm on there.
If you rewatch that movie, right, that movie has not aged well at all. And if you were to play it for today's audience, they would say it is a horrible movie that makes no sense. And they would laugh it out of the theater, right?
Okay, I could see that.
By extension, if you were to take a movie that seems to be fairly reviled, which is Batman versus Superman, right? Which I gave a C to a kind of a C plus, C minus, somewhere in that area, right? But it's commonly reviled. If you took Batman versus Superman and you played that in 1998 instead of Batman and Robin, if Batman versus Superman came out, people would have loved it. Oh my gosh, this is such a big change to the Batman character, the Batman entity. Oh, it was gritty, it was big, it was dark. Did you see the Superman thing? Right. So I say all of that to emphasize, to say that because of what's happened, this development we've had over the years of comic properties, right? Remember, we had the big collapse of comic properties in the 90s with Batman, the whole Schumacher Batman's becoming a joke overall, right? Where comic companies didn't want to touch, movie companies didn't want to touch comic movies. And then the slow walk back, starting with Blade, which many people didn't even know was a comic movie. But if you go look at it, when it opens up, the opening credits in Blade, executive producer Stan Lee.
We've had this conversation before.
Into the credits, what rolls up, Marvel Comics, giving them making Sony willing to take a risk on Spider-Man, a serious Spider-Man.
But see, with that tone real quick, like with the credits on Blade, a lot of people outside of the comic book industry had no idea who Stan Lee was. So seeing his name as an executive producer didn't even mean much. And even to take it a step further, when it said character Blade and Deacon Frost based off characters used in Marvel Comics, those words were very small on the screen, and you really had to look and be like, oh, okay.
Now, with all that preface, let's talk about why I think comic movies are bad.
Hmm.
What comic movies may be bad in today's world, and I
Hmm.
think it's Hollywood narcissism on what sells and what doesn't sell.
Okay.
It's all about making money in the end, and if it's not going to make money or not forecast to make money, it's not going to be put out there, right? And so Hollywood decides, looks at a property and says, we think there's something about this property we can use to make money. We'll
Hmm.
give it a platform to make money. But now you have something called the different layers of cell that get injected into, well, we know we want to use Moon. I'm just going to create something to make the point. We want to use Moon Knight. We testing from our data, we see this type of kind of street level character you could have some great action scenes, but it's also melancholy. He's got a mental health thing going on. There's something out there that we can market and get some public swell there. So let's try to make a Moon Knight movie. Now we say we know that men go for action, so we want to have big stunts and big action scenes in Moon Knight, whether it fits the character or not. We also know that women enjoy love stories, right? Because we have 70 years of data saying women go to the movies for love stories, right? And so we're going to create, does he have a love interest? No. So we're going to write in a love interest, right? Now we have to make this connected. We have to connect this to the kid, right? We need to make this accessible to the young adults so the parents go to the movies, right? And so we're going to put a kid in the movie. Well, if we want parents to bring kids, it can't be rated R. It's got to be PG-13 or less, right? And you start this shaving away so it can meet the Hollywood aspect. Now, writers, you've got Hollywood writer who's been writing scripts, been writing screenplays for 30 years. And you're telling this writer, hey, we want you to go use the work that this funny book guy wrote, right? And they go, I'm not going to read that crap. I'm not going to go research some funny books and it's so I can write an effective sound. I'm a Hollywood legend. I'm a pro. I can do it. And I think it's an allegation. And so companies in the modern sense that stick to what the 30 years of canon that's already there. I'm going to go see where the previous writers went with this character. I think that credibility has increased between those two communities where Hollywood writers aren't looking down their nose at comic writers.
Right.
There have been so many of these properties that have been successful now. But I think when you do see these movies that just don't fire on all syllables, it comes down to the comic writers and the movie writers not respecting the source material of the comic writers. And I'm not talking about making it all fit. You've got 700 issues. I can't get it all in the movie. That's fair. I'm talking about creative license. I'm going to do what I want with this character. I don't care what the source material says. A, right? B, Hollywood then saying based on those changes, what are our second, third, and fourth levels of sell, right? And then C, funding, right? And once you mix all those together in the modern sense, you can have a recipe of a disaster for a modern comic movie. I'm going to go to Carnage right now, right? And while I said not Carnage, I apologize. I'm going to go to Venom. I don't have a problem with the Venom movies, but you can't compare them to the MCU product that's being put out. It's just not as polished. It's just not as together, right? And
well, Tone, to stop you right there for a second, do you think that we are too accustomed and too set for expectations on what a comic book movie should be based off of Marvel's formula?
I say I could say yes to that also and no to that also.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of people out there that are in love with the Marvel formula, and whenever they see something that's not the Marvel formula, they balk, right? Right? And I hate that, right? But I also think that other companies, instead, you don't have to follow the Marvel formula, but you still have to come up with a formula that works. And I think that's in a direct contrast, something that the DC universe, cinematic universe, has struggled with, a formula that works. You can do something different, but whatever you do, it better be good and it better work, because Marvel's misfires as movies are still better as products than most of DC's cinematic movies, right?
That's very true.
And so, and this is not to say we're an absolutist society. It's either absolutely amazing or it's absolutely horrible. I don't think most of DC movies are just absolute trash, right? But at the same time, there's a bar that's been set, and they're not rising to that bar. I think they would fail if they tried to emulate Marvel's formula.
Mm-hmm.
But you should be in your room, you should be in your offices right now designing what's not Marvel, what you want to be, and plotting it out and then executing it effectively. Keep in mind, the DC Marvel comparison isn't as even as everybody thinks it is, because in the end, Marvel is owned by Disney, which is an entertainment company. Right. They deal with intellectual entertainment properties at Disney. It's what they do. Right. DC Comics is owned now by Discovery. It was owned by AT&T.
Warner Brothers specifically. Yep.
It's a telecommunications company, right? That's just looking to turn a profit. We'll keep it if it's profitable. And so they're not backed by the same depth of knowledge and experience or money, right, towards creative effort that Marvel is. And that may be translating to this very uneven approach to DC. But in the end, that's my answer. I think it's Hollywood writers combined with second and third layers of cell, combined with no great strategic plan.
Okay.
All of that in a bubble, held in contrast to the rising standard of what these movies should be.
Gotcha. Jamie, what are your thoughts?
Well, Tone hit like every aspect in my mind I could think of, but it comes down to me, who is directing the movie? And kind of like piggybacking off what Tone said at one point, it's the respect towards the writers at that regard of what came in the past. If you take a new director and he's like, I'm not going to check out any of this material, like I'm just going to go forward with the movie, kind of get like the spark notes and go from there. You know, it's not going to be the best thing you've ever seen. You look at someone like Sam Raimi, for example, who loved Spider-Man growing up, favorite character.
Yeah. Actually read the comic books.
Actually read the comics and made a great trilogy. If we don't want to talk about third one, we don't have to, but overall made, a great trilogy. And then comes and takes Multiverse of Madness and totally just breaks the gate down with that. But then you look at the other side of that and you look at what was supposed to be DC's MCU lead-off movie, which was Green Lantern. There were so many interviews with even Ryan Reynolds where he went, yeah, the director and writing staff didn't even get the oath right at the beginning. They didn't have it worded right. So how are you going? He's like, we need to stop this and bring someone in. And near the end of the movie, they brought in Jeff Johns as an executive producer.
By then it was too late, though.
It was too late at that point. So, and even with the director, he was like, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I tried, but I didn't do it, on purpose. And that had great features. It had great CGI. It would have had a well backstory if they would have done it properly. There were a lot of points made from the comic references to now or in that movie, but they had to change up so many aspects that it just made it that bad to me. Right. You look at something, and even some people in the comments right now are even saying, like, you look at Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four can't hit the wall with a ball if it's right in front of them for some reason. You have Cloud Galactus, you have the Fantastic Four shtick. You they just can't get a win. But then you look at someone like we just had, which, spoiler alert, Multiverse of Madness had 5 minutes of John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, and everyone lost their minds about what the possibilities could be. So to me, I mean, at the end of it, it comes down to how much respect you have, like, going into making that kind of a movie. Now, people are always going to be different about it, because I know I was one of those critics where, like, say, like, we'll take Jason Momoa as Aquaman for a minute. He isn't blonde hair, blue eyed, skinny, just kind of ripped. This dude's got tattoos everywhere, black hair, it's got a scar in his eye, just walking through like he could take everybody, drinking Jack Daniels, slamming it into the ocean. It was great, but it wasn't who they were brought up with.
No.
Amy,
So
you got a question in chat from Chrissy Jean.
it's Kristen. And
oh, hey, Kristen. How do you make a beloved
yeah,
comic not translate to cheesy on the big screen? Howard, what's the case in point? Howard the Duck, which was very cheesy on the big screen, versus Guardians, right? Which wasn't cheesy on the big screen. What do you think about that?
Well, for my instance, like the original Howard the Duck, it just felt like they had a property, they were gonna go for it. You know, let's just see, like, let's, as Marvel always does, let's throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. And for most people, it became a cult classic, but it was a cheesier version of it, where Guardians of the Galaxy kind of transcended this idea of let's take cheesy, but make it great in a sense, in their minds, where you have those corny lines, but then at the end of the day, they focused on the family, love, and action. Kind of like what you were talking about, Tone. You found those 3 cells right there, and they combined them together to make a great movie. Now, Howard Duck did make an appearance in it, slight, but he was still there. With the word cheesy, it's kind of hard to decipher that in a sense, because there's a lot of movies out there that you could think are just cheesy. But if you were going to try to say maybe this isn't the right take on a character and it was a total flip, maybe then I can kind of see where that's going. But Howard the Duck has been kind of everybody. He was Deadpool in a 5-issue series. Yeah, that's just Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
So, it's a win or lose battle on that aspect. So thank you for that question, Kristen.
I think that I think some characters, no matter what you do, if you try to put them on the screen, they're going to come off as cheesy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way DC could do a Batmite movie without it being cheesy because of the nature of Batmite.
Yeah.
And I think you could actually pull it off, right? A Howard the Duck movie or a Batmite movie if they were animated movies. And then the writers would get more leeway, could do different things, and they could almost come off more serious.
Yeah.
I think the moment you try to take those characters and put them into the real world, you automatically are going to hit cheese. That's what I think.
Well, gentlemen, if you don't mind, let me throw my hat into this conversation.
Oh no, we mind.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kidding.
We don't mind at all.
No.
We don't mind.
We were worried about Kristen's question. Sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So what you guys have already talked about before with the writers, I don't think much more needs to be said beyond what you guys have already said. You get writers, directors, producers, that come in on a property, and they're like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with what someone else has done. I'm going to do, and these are my most feared words when I hear it in promotions, I'm going to do a fresh new take. As soon as I hear those words, I immediately clutch my pearls, so to speak, because whenever somebody says I'm going to do a fresh new take, something different, something new, something we've never seen before, we have history to show us that it didn't pan out. And the most recent of that being Morbius. You can go back to some of the DCEU movies, love them or hate them. I personally love them. The only DC EU movie that I was not a fan of was Birds of Prey, and that is because they tried to do a fresh new take on a bunch of different stuff and it didn't work. That's just my personal opinion though. But the other thing I wanted to talk about why some comic movies struggle, and Spider-Man 3 is a prime example of this, studio involvement. So, and Tone, you even touched on that in your explanation on why you think comic book movies struggle. So I'm going to kind of branch off of that. So Spider-Man 3 is the best example of a studio getting too involved in the process of creation of a comic book movie. What was Sam Raimi's original vision for Spider-Man 3? It was just Sandman and the finishing off of the Harry and Peter storyline, right? That was it. Sandman was going to be the big baddie, and then Vulture was going to come for number 4. Sam Raimi had this whole thing worked out, a lot of classic villains coming in, and those classic villains getting their turn at the spotlight in studio. What did Sony do? They're like, no, we want Venom in there. So all this stuff that you have going on, write Venom in there too. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, either you do it or you're fired. Well, okay. So what did he do? He wrote it in there. Venom was in the movie. The movie turned into a cluster of unfixable proportions. And now it's what it is. It's a meme movie. It's a movie that people look at and they're like, oh man, come on. Another movie is Fantastic Four, the most recent one. Josh Tank, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't start me lying because ugh.
Dude, that was another instance of studio involvement. What we saw on screen was not what he wanted as a film. And I think you can tell the point to where the studio really gets involved is like after the first act of the movie. Once that's done, the studio's like, yeah, we need to change some things. We need to make some things different. We need to do things a different way. And he's like, well, wait a minute, I've got this whole story planned out. And you can see where he took a lot of influence from the Ultimate Fantastic Four comic book line that Millar did. And they had a really good story in the first act. And I was sold through the first act. And then second act and third act happened. And I'm like, what am I watching? What is this? This is not a Fantastic Four movie at all. This has nothing to do with the Fantastic Four. That's another example of studio involvement. Now, the only thing that I can think of as far as studio involvement goes that, most of the DC live action movies, studio involvement, with the exception of, I think, Man of Steel and not James Gunn's Suicide Squad, but
David Ayer.
Yeah, Suicide Squad. I loved that movie, Jared Leto aside. I thought the movie was great. And Ayer was allowed a lot of creative freedom with the story he wanted to tell, which is not what we saw on screen. But what came out on screen was good. I don't care what anybody says, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. I enjoyed the movie. I still watch the movie from time to time, and as many faults as it has, it's still fun. It's like a roller coaster. You get on it for 2 minutes, you're done, you had a good time. I want to go on that again. But Birds of Prey studio involvement, they wanted it to be a certain way, and it became the movie that it was. So yeah, writers and studio involvement, I think, are two big reasons why some comic movies struggle more than others.
Tim, that's not just a great reason. Here's a little known fact. I can't say it's a fact, but it's what I read a while back.
Okay.
That also was a big factor in what happened with the Matrix Reloaded and the Matrix Revolutions.
Exactly.
And at that time, the Wachowski sisters commented after the struggles, after the a year or two afterwards, and they said they were really taken aback. They said when they made the Matrix, it was really in a vacuum, and they went over the project. They were spending more time in Japan learning how to translate things they'd seen in anime, and
it was revolutionary,
film, right? And the story, they got to kind of knuck the story down on their own, and they worked to try and stay within their budget, and they were really not a lot of wires attached to what they were doing. The Matrix comes out, it shakes up the world, but now when they start filming on the Matrix Reloaded, right, they've got 1,000 executives walking around the set, questioning everything, getting involved in different processes.
What is this machine? Get this out of here. That's integral to the story. It doesn't look good. Get rid of it. Put this puppy in instead.
You think now you think which movie is that? Which studio is that does the movie? Do you think they're gonna freaking let their potential cash cow that's gonna make them 300, 400, 600 $1 million?
No.
Hopefully $1 billion international. You think we're gonna let these two at the time gentlemen now? You think we're going to let them run it? No, we're going to get our people there. We're going to tell them how it's going to go. We're going to introduce our layers of cell into it.
Yeah.
And now the people who created it no longer have creative control.
Nope. And they're just people in the seat like everybody else. Yeah. I understand. Exactly, I understand that you have to have compromise and you have to be able to make sacrifices because your ultimate vision, whatever it may be, most likely will not, unless you're Steven Spielberg or Martin Scorsese or
don't talk about him on these shows.
Francis Ford Coppola, James Gunn, et cetera, unless your vision translates perfectly on screen. You need to change things. You need to sacrifice. You need to compromise, but you need to fight for things too. And that, with the studio involvement, you get somebody like James Gunn, for instance, thrown onto a big budget Guardians of the Galaxy movie, blows it out of the water, $800 million. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, dude has full creative control. That's where studio involvement was really scaled back. But I mean, like with Sam Raimi, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 2 hailed as one of the best superhero movies, if not one of the best written movies out in the modern era. The executives come marching in for Spider-Man 3. We want to change things. We want things to look different. This is how we want it. Guys, the last 2 movies I did were utterly fantastic. Fans love them. Comic book movies are exploding everywhere. You've got the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, new Superman on the way, new Batman on the way. Yeah, but I want to try something new and different. Yeah. So that's my take on it. Do you guys have any final words on this? Why comic book movies struggle?
I think we pretty much hit every aspect of why they struggle.
Well, all right. Then before we get out of here, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to go ahead and give you the social media spiel first, and then let these 2 fine gentlemen take us out today. Don't forget to find us on all the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, Discord, and podcast streaming platforms. All you got to do is type in the Codex Station, and that is where you will find us. Once again, my name is Tim. This guy on the other side of me is Jamie. Wonderful. Down below is Tone Super, the sci-fi swordsman. Jamie, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, guys. And thank you again for watching, tuning in, whatever way you do, through Twitch, through YouTube, or even listening to our voices. It's all appreciated. And we're trying to build a better comic book community, and that takes you. And for what we have right now, we got a great foundation to start, and we just want to keep adding on to that. So guys, spread the word. We're here for you. As always, be kind to one another out there. You never know what anyone's going through, and even a smile can change the perspective or life of somebody. So always be kind. And as Tim alluded to, please follow us, like, subscribe, share if possible. Every little bit helps. And guys, as always, I'll see you in the next one.
And for me, as always, I just like to say thank you for taking the time to fellowship with us, to share with us, spend time with us tonight, to join our clan. We hope you're having a good time here with us, and we hope you invite your family and friends to help continue to grow this clan here at the Codex Station. We love comics and we love heroes, and you are a hero.
Have a good one, guys.
Good night.